All right. Apparently we are live. We're gonna hope that this works out audio wise, but well, if it doesn't, that's on me. Hey folks, so I'm working on a video about Invincible season 2 and how much I absolutely adore it in comparison to the original source material, to the comics. I think it's just a massive, massive, massive improvement in almost every way. And that video is probably going to come out either tomorrow or next week. We'll see, but it's almost completely scripted, and then I just have to record and edit it together and all of that business. But beyond that, I just wanted to talk about there's if you've been watching Invincible at all the past couple of weeks, as it's been coming out, and you're watching any content about it on YouTube, there's a very good chance that you've been getting content from this particular account here. I guess my cursor doesn't show. Oh, there we go. Yeah, you've probably been getting stuff from this account here. For the most part, they do stuff that's fairly inoffensive. It's mostly like I'm gonna make sure that I can see stuff from my computer's perspective. There we go. Mostly they do stuff that's pretty basically inoffensive, just random differences between the show and the comics, or reviewing fights and stuff like that. And I don't find it incredibly interesting content or anything like that, but to each their own. It's totally worthwhile. It's totally interesting, fun, entertaining stuff at the very least, and there's definitely a market for it. But recently, and I guess it's not as recent now that I've looked back at this guy's kind of backlog and seen, he's gone off about some very interesting and strange things. Has some strange issues with this show and with discourse surrounding it, and so I just wanted to talk about it here. There are going to be some minor spoilers here. I think he's going to spoil some stuff that comes out like later in the comics. I don't think it's a huge deal, but just for what it's worth. And otherwise, there will be some spoilers up to episode 4 of season 2. Although I'm going to try to keep those to a minimum, so it's pretty much whatever he says, and then I'm gonna try and avoid that as much as possible. But all right, let's listen to what he has to say about one of the changes that the show made compared to the comics.
This is Invincible Season 2, Episode 3 in the comic books. In the comic books, Lucan is tall, muscular, and fit. He kind of looks like Shaft or Shaquille O'Neal, and he's one of everybody's favorite Viltrumites because of how good of a father and husband he is. But in Season 2, Episode 3, Lucan is average height and fat, and he looks a lot like Carl from Family Matters.
Okay, so right off the bat, I think as a discussion topic, it is interesting to talk about like character design changes and stuff like that. There are definitely plenty of characters that have gone through a bit of a design change. The most obvious one is actually probably Adam Eve, right? That's the one that everybody knows about. And so like I don't necessarily mind discussing this as a topic. Although, as you can see there, as you'll see in a minute here, it's going to take an interesting direction. Also, someone let me know if audio is really weird here, or if one of these is overpowering or not, because I can fix that.
Which makes absolutely no sense because Viltrumites possess smart cells, which automatically develops their bodies into the strongest and fastest version of themselves, much like Saiyans from Dragon Ball, which Viltrumites are heavily inspired by. Them trying to make the series woke and...
Okay, so the first thing that kind of got to me about this that I thought was kind of funny is if you've read the Invincible comic books, you don't remember that. I'm sorry, I do not believe for a second that you remember. I have no memory of them discussing this. Apparently, the Viltrumite characters have cells that adapt their body into perfect fit, whatever. But I also, what I thought was especially funny is that if this guy's going to be super pedantic about comic book lore and how they're not following up with with stuff that's set up by the comics, it's a little bit funny to me that apparently he actually got that wrong. That's not actually what it's called. Let's see here, if I can find it here. It's not called smart cells, they're called smart atoms, which is not a huge deal. Yeah, it's not like a huge deal or anything. It's just very funny when someone gets super pedantic and like in an anti-woke manner. They're like, oh, wokeness is ruining this. I care so much about comic accuracy. And then they literally don't even get the criticism right. I thought that was just kind of a little bit funny. But okay, apparently the fact that they made this character a slightly different build is wokeness. I'm gonna let him finish here, and then I kind of want to talk about my thoughts on this interpretation, and then we're gonna talk about his responses to criticism on this because there's been a fair bit of it.
And diverse is completely destroying the original concept, in my opinion. Lucan was the only Viltrumite that stood up to Thrag and said he didn't want more than one woman when they were ordered to procreate on Earth. It may not seem like a big deal to you, but Viltrumite's smart selves just wouldn't allow it. I'm just tired of this many different types of bodies woke stuff. Differences in Invincible.
Okay, and so this was the thing that really like that made me want to talk about it is the fact that immediately just seeing this character design change, the only thought that this person, and I think a lot of people in this kind of sphere had, is that it has to be wokeness. Like it has to be this desire for diversity or like body positivity or whatever, that there could be no other reason for them to make these character changes. And I just think that's very, very silly as a concept. And I think it's a very interesting indication of the way that this sort of mindset kind of destroys your ability to engage with media. So, I mean, for starters, there are a lot of different reasons, a lot of good writing reasons why you would want to make a change like this. When you go back to, writing a monthly release comic, I think they tried to get it monthly. I don't think that actually ended up working out. There are reasons why characters might want to have all very similar builds or very similar designs, but as you're adapting that to the big screen, you want to engage people a little bit, and you want them to be able to distinguish between all of these different characters. Because if you go back and read, I mean, a lot of different comic books, honestly, there are a lot of characters that just kind of blend into the background, and it surprises you when you find out, oh, this was a different person the whole time, just because like it's not super obvious, because even if they say a different name or they describe them slightly differently, unless you're paying a lot of attention, like you see the same guy pop up and you assume it's the same guy. And most people watch movies and TV shows that way, right? Where they're not super in depth with the lore or with character designs or anything like that. And so I just like, as a means of getting people to recognize the difference between these different characters and get invested in different people, it makes perfect sense from a design perspective. But even then, the other thing that kind of got me is that, like, if you're going to go off about this whole freaking lore business or whatever, the way that we've established these characters have super strength in the show and in the comics is not based off of their build. It's not based off of their muscles almost at all. I'm sure there's some sort of a correlation there, but right, like the opening scene, or not the opening, the scene where he gets his powers in the show is literally he walks out to a garbage can, manages to barely pick up a garbage bag and throw it into the dumpster, and then he gets his powers in between putting that garbage bag away, and then all of a sudden he can like throw it into orbit, right? It's this, like, there's no physical change. There's no obvious, it's not like in Spider-Man where he wakes up the next morning and he's all of a sudden like way, physically larger, like he can't, he doesn't fit into his pants anymore. Like he literally is just like, they just get superpowers. It is not at all to do with their muscles, and it would be ridiculous if it was. He's going to get into this a little bit in his response, because people were quite critical of this. But I just think it's such an interesting kind of indication of the way that people engage with media, that I almost think that a lot of this like anti-woke stuff is ruining people's ability to enjoy things, not because they're being too heavily critical or anything, but just because they're literally not able to divorce changes or improvements or story beats outside of the woke anti-woke kind of dichotomy. But anyway, a lot of people responded to him with criticism about this particular video, and I figured we should look at his response. And then apparently he has another response that I have not seen, that I'm kind of curious about, and maybe he'll even, I don't know, maybe he'll acknowledge some of the mistakes here. I'm really not sure, but let's look at the first response.
Invincible Season 2, Episode 3, I made a video stating that Lucan is now fat, and now he looks like Carl Winslow from Family Matters.
You know?
As opposed to his comic book counterpart that's muscular and fit and kind of looks a lot like Steve Harvey, with muscles. There are a few of you who commented saying I'm an idiot, and it seems as if I've never seen...
Are they calling him an idiot? I feel like they're just being critical here. I don't know.
A strong man's built before. And you guys are right. I don't know what I was thinking. He definitely has a strong.
So okay, this is the critique that a lot of people were making. Also, fantastic pause frame. I love that. Is that what he seems to be unaware of, because of course you're just interpreting this character change through the perspective of, oh, they changed this character's design in a way that arguably makes them fit more into a diverse or diversity oriented perspective, that that has to be the reason why, and there can't be any other motivation behind it. And so people pointed out that, well, really he's a, I think what's the word, power lifter or a strongman physique, like that he still has a physique that is very heavily associated with strength and with peak physical prowess. And so then he shows a bunch of pictures of bodybuilders, which is a completely different thing, as evidence that everyone's completely full of shit for calling him out for that. So he literally like looks up a different thing, but also he shows this guy in the frickin' video, and I just think that's so funny. It's like, this dude, like, okay, I hopefully no weird spoilers or whatever come up. Okay. Okay. This dude. Like, come on. Like, you're showing exactly the critique that people are making here. And the point isn't even the fact that he's wrong about, or like that he's making a mistake about a piece of media. It's the fact that like he's just unable to interpret this in any other way. Like, people come up with a valid criticism, and I mean, already I think it was silly that he made it to begin with, but like if someone notices that and they're like, actually no, here's how this works, here's the reason why this is the way that it is, and like he can't just interpret that. He can't just be like, oh, I guess I made a mistake, I guess that was silly.
Strong man's built. I must have missed his muscles that were hidden under the massive gut in front of him. Now it's gonna make perfect sense how Lucan breaks Omni-Man's back in the coming fight this Thursday. If a 700-pound man falls out of the sky into your back, he's definitely gonna fold you like a lawn chair. Some of you don't even have the brain cells to realize Lucan from the comic books is the one with the strong man's build, not Carl Winslow.
And okay, getting over the fact that he's just like just kind of being an asshole here and being insulting or whatever. Again, like, this just feels like a complete, like, you suddenly become unable to interpret your own show's lore when you have to complain about the fact that I guess this character is like slightly overweight compared to what he looked like previously. Like, again, it literally does not matter what their build is. It's been made pretty goddamn clear by the show and by just, I mean, even by the comics, that like their strength is primarily tied to their species and not to their physical build. And I just think it's just, I think it's just a really interesting microcosm. So I want to look at this next response, and then there's some really interesting stuff on this channel that I wanted to address, that really called out to me, because why not? Let's do a woke Invincible stream. You know what I mean? So okay, let's see where he goes from here.
Video stating that Lucan from Invincible is now fat.
Really like to know?
Okay, why does he show the exact same video every single time? We know who you're talking about. I don't know. That's just like, why? I don't understand why it matters, but okay.
Compared to his comic book counterpart that was more like a bodybuilder, muscular and fit. But the animated version was nothing like that. He looked like Carl Winslow from Family Matters.
The Empire. If not, you'll die.
He looked nothing like the original Lucan until Omni-Man gave him that tummy tuck. The next time we saw Lucan, he was a completely different character.
Next time you kill somebody,
he instantly lost 400 pounds and looked exactly like his comic book counterpart.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. No, you're right. So yeah, this guy. He gets cut up. He gets severely injured, and suddenly, that being his now most important defining trait, you're right. He does kind of look different from the way he looked before, because he's literally been disemboweled. Yeah. Okay, I was really hoping that this was going to be a response to criticism on that, but oh, there was something he said earlier on here. Fuck, I hate these.
I made a video
Yeah,
stating
okay.
that Lucan from Invincible is now fat.
Really like to know?
Yeah, yeah.
Compared to his comic book counterpart that was more like a bodybuilder, muscular and fit. But the animated version was nothing like that.
Yeah, we are.
He looked like
this.
Carl Winslow from Family Matters.
The Empire. If not, you'll die.
Actual fandom, I agree. I do need more subs. I'm surprised at the number of people that have subscribed in this last week, though. You know, we're working on it, and we're doing this for funsies at this point. But yeah, no, I would say as a reminder, you like subscribe to this channel. But like, there are 5 people watching. I'm not really that worried about it.
He looked nothing like the original Lucan until Omni-Man gave him that tummy tuck.
Okay, maybe I'm thinking of something else. I thought there was something interesting here to talk about. Otherwise, besides that, but. Why thank you very much. I appreciate that. I am, we're trying to do good stuff here. We're doing our best. The thing though that I wanted to address before we go into some of this other stuff, because I just think like, there's kind of a saga here. He keeps coming back to the same freaking thing over and over again. And so in this response video, right, people told him, they were like, hey, this guy has a strong man build, not, like that you're just misunderstanding what's going on here. Like, he's still incredibly physically strong, all of that business, whatever. And then he shows a bunch of pictures of bodybuilders, right? So I'm like, let's pull this up, right? Bodybuilder, you can get some entertainment, some enjoyment out of looking at this. You're right. Yeah. That character does not look like this, at all. But if you were to look up, the actual term that people were referring to when they were criticizing you, you would see a bunch of dudes look like that. Look like that. Oh my god, it's a bunch of dudes who are super strong and who kind of look kind of similar to this character. And I just, like, I don't understand this obsession, this like incessant need to be angry about something that you just clearly don't understand. And like the fact that people told him that, and then he looked up a different thing, like, I have to know, like, is he aware of the fact that he just said a factually incorrect thing? Did he just like look up a different thing, or just like ignore all of the stuff that people said to him? Like, I don't know. I don't understand why a person would not just acknowledge the fact that they were wrong there. Like, he clearly looked up a completely different search term. And I don't know, that's one of the points that I do try to get on here and there, is just that part of the problem, part of this engagement, right? We saw this with, what's it called? Top Gun Maverick, right? Where people are obsessed with the idea that their show can't be woke, or that it can't have some sort of like a political message, that they end up falling in love with, this other, this movie or whatever that doesn't spell it out as obviously for them, and or doesn't or pushes a message that they actually agree with, and then they completely lose their ability to interpret political messages all of a sudden. Invincible, and I have done a video on this, and I would recommend checking it out, and I'm doing another one right now, and I would recommend checking that out when it comes out, on how the writers for this show have been fantastic at making adjustments, making changes to their source material to make a better show, to do better storytelling, to write better characters, all of that business. And so it blows my mind when, we watch this, season one covers, for the most part, issues 1 through 13 of the comics, and it's far and away better than what it was to begin with. Absolutely fantastic, massive improvement. And it's like people just literally do not trust their ability to adapt things as soon as it's like a change that is, I guess, slightly in line with something that a woke person would also support. And I don't know. I just, like, I don't understand how you review movies, how you talk about stories, how you do any of that business, if you just like if that's all you do. But he gets into some interesting stuff here. I really wanted to. This video absolutely jumped out to me. Kate from Invincible is, I don't even want to say it out loud. Is street legal. This one really called out to me. This is based off of some discourse that I'm definitely quite familiar with, so I figured we would check it out. We would discuss, because, oh god, there's gonna be some good takes here, I'm sure.
In Invincible Season 2, Episode 2, fans are having the same argument comic book fans had years ago when they found out the Immortal was with Duplicate. So once again, the Immortal is being labeled a pedo. For the record, Kate...
Okay. First, some setup. If you're not aware, the character Immortal, awesome, fantastic freeze. The character of the Immortal, his whole shtick is that he's like lived for hundreds to thousands of years, and every time he dies, like he can just come back to life. You know, lore wise, I guess minor spoilers. He was like canonically Abraham Lincoln in the Invincible universe, and you know, then he was shot, and then he adopted a new identity, whatever. So he is this several thousand, or at least several hundred, and I believe several thousand-year-old character, who has, by extension, been an adult for a very, 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 very long time, compared to this character, Duplicate, who is like, I think 19. I believe, yeah, I think she's literally a freaking teenager in this show. And that is creepy. It is weird that those two characters date. And I sincerely hope that the show does more to acknowledge that, because they kind of reference it in the comics, but I don't think it goes far enough. But I want to know how somebody is going to justify the fact that this... We're going to just roll with a few hundred years, because I don't remember exactly how old he is, but several hundred-year-old character is dating a 19-year-old.
Kate is 18 or 19 years old. She's street legal.
Cool.
And for the record, Rex was 19 when he...
That's so freaking creepy. Oh my god. You, like... Why is that your go-to? Why is that the thing that you're super into? Oh yeah, you're right. It is technically legal. We also don't have a legal system based on the existence of people that are several hundred years old. And like, I'm sorry, in real life, if a 60-year-old person were dating an 18 or 19-year-old, I would hope that everybody recognizes that that's really creepy. The people who don't recognize that are usually the people who are just generally in favor of like child marriage and shit. Like are these really the people you want to be allying yourselves with? The people who want to be adult men dating teenagers?
Got with Eve when she just turned 16. And if the Immortal...
Okay, wait. I want to go back.
The pedo. For the record, Kate is 18 or 19 years old. She's street legal. And for the record, Rex was 19 when he got with Eve when she just turned 16.
Okay. So I think that is kind of creepy. I don't feel like it was addressed in the show that way, but I do think that is a weird thing for him to do. 19-year-olds dating 16, or like, I'm sorry, I understand, you know, when you're older, when you're like 23 and 26, like the gap in your understanding and your experience and your life, whatever, is a lot smaller than the gap between a 16 and a 19-year-old. Like, just, I'm sorry, flat out, that's how that is. That's creepy. That said, we're not talking about an age gap of 19. We're talking about an age gap of several hundred years, where one of the people's brain has not fully developed yet. One of the people is still a teenager. Like it's not even close to the same thing. And it's so weird to me that is the angle that you would go at. Is like, oh, hey, here's this character who did this like mildly creepy-ish thing, like, or potentially majorly creepy thing, and we're totally fine with that. And like, I mean, no, we're not. Who the fuck likes Rex and Eve's relationship in this show? Like that's pretty much universally agreed to have been a terrible relationship. But I don't know, weird angle, dude.
And if the Immortal should take the time to be concerned about how much older he is than every woman he sleeps with, he would never smash any cheeks. The guy could be everyone on Earth's great-grandfather.
Okay. If that is the life that you lead, if that is the way that things are, like that, I'm sorry, that sucks for you, right? I'm not even saying it is, right? I think there comes to a point, if you're like like if you're, you know, whatever, in the context of like a comic book universe, because obviously none of this is real, and age gap discourse is so goddamn toxic. But like a 30-year-old, I feel like could reasonably make decisions based off of that thing, because at that point, like they are full on, like they're fully an adult, they're dealing with their own stuff, and it's still weird, and I understand, like I would still be uncomfortable with it, but like I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, for sure this person is a predator. But like if that is the case, if you are in a situation where you cannot engage in romantic or sexual relationships with someone without it being predatory, like you're just in, I don't know, some weird like superhero universe type situation, like then you don't get to do that. That's the situation. If you are an adult and you get stranded on an island of teenagers, you don't get to have romantic relationships. Like, I'm sorry, that's just how that works. And it's just weird that someone would be like, oh, but like if we care about the ethics of this situation, then like he's not gonna get laid, and I'm fine with that. Like that too bad, sucks to suck, I guess. I don't know. There are a multitude of aliens and space beings that are, I guess those are all aliens, but there are a multitude of characters that he could engage in relationships with if that's what he really wanted. But also, if he can't do that, like, sucks to be him.
Wasn't Omni-Man over 2,000 years old when he met Debbie in her early 20s? If Omni-Man stopped to care about the age difference between him and Debbie, there would be no Invincible.
Okay. Do you really sincerely want to be using the genocidal wannabe tyrant as your example of why this like age gap thing is ethical or why it's acceptable? Like literally a guy who murdered countless people, murdered thousands of people, and you're like, oh, well, if he had stopped to care about the age gap in his relationship, then we wouldn't have this story. Like he was literally a bad guy. He was a villain. He was an antagonist. His goal was to manipulate and abuse people. Like, I don't know. It's just so weird. Like that this is what you can come up with to defend this creepy ass age gap bullshit. Yeah.
Plus, the Immortal married Kate and they had twins. And if you read the comic books or watched the animated series, you would realize that Kate always looked older than Eve. All I'm saying is getting mad at a guy because he hooked up with a 19-year-old girl whom he married and had kids with is stupid. The same Immortal that lived thousands of years into the future after she died and went mad because he couldn't remember her face.
Yeah, I don't. It's still creepy. Like, it's still weird. I don't care that they then wrote a bunch of stuff on top of that, or that she looks older than another character. Like, it's still weird, still not a cool thing to do. I don't know. Like, I don't even have any more arguments on this. It's just like this is one of the things that I think is going to become more and more a part of kind of the Invincible discourse as the show goes on. This is a thing that people are going to be talking about as it becomes more of a plot thread. And I don't understand why. I do not understand why people cannot just look at this several hundred-year-old man, this old man dating a teenager, and not think, yeah, no, that is really weird. Yeah, it is kind of creepy, kind of gross, kind of not something he should be doing, maybe. And I think the show, and I don't want to like spoil any more of this or whatever, but like the show I think does kind of go at it from an interesting angle, just from the little bit of it that they've shown so far, that I think might be worth them discussing or addressing. But like this isn't it. I don't think he makes any more arguments in this video. I think that now he's just going to start talking about how, like, in some timeline or whatever, like Immortal was really, really depressed about the fact that he couldn't remember her name. And I don't care. Like, I do not care that you wrote an abusive a relationship that would be very, very abusive in real life, and then wrote that actually it wasn't that. Like, I don't know. You could do that with anything. You could be like, oh, you guys have a problem with the fact that this, actually, that's not a very good example. I don't know. Like, you could be like, oh, you have a problem with the fact that my character is a murderer and killed a bunch of people. Well, actually, all the people coincidentally turned out to be monsters, turned out to be terrible people themselves. And so actually he technically accidentally did the world a favor. And like, that doesn't change anything. I don't care. It's like, you can write anything. We're talking about the fact, like, we're talking about the relationship that this has to the real world, and that is just not it. That's just, I do not give a shit. I don't care. But okay, there are a couple more videos from this guy, because I think we're just kind of on a kick here. And if I can still talk after we're done talking about this, I do kind of want to talk about that article what's it called? The like 100 things you can do to make life easier for Black people, because people have been talking about that recently because they reposted it, and I thought it was a really interesting, really interesting discourse. But all right, let's get on this. So this one is going to be fucking ads. Okay, can I just mute this? Oh, where is it? Where's the mute? There we go. So one of the things that jumped out to me is that, okay, this guy's going to talk about, because obviously the biggest Invincible discourse that we've had, I think, is literally about Amber Bennett, and at some point I might talk more in depth about her and about that whole situation. But this particular one jumped out to me, the idea that he's going to talk about who, actually she is well written, but she's well written to be a monstrous character. She's well written to be like a toxic feminist, and I kind of want to just see like what arguments he's going to make for that, because I think that is a profoundly silly perspective to take.
Amber is the most hated and the only hated character in the entire Invincible animated series. Most fans say she was poorly written because she got...
Oh my god, that reminds me of that. Has everyone seen the top 10 most hated characters thing that people have been going off about? That's March 4th. Was it this one? I think it was probably this list. No, it's not. Okay, basically the thing that I was getting at was a thing that was going around on Twitter recently, because they took a whole huge ass vote and everything about the most hated characters of all time, and it was like, oh yeah, and like Skylar White made it on like the top 4th or whatever, like top 6 most hated characters of all time, and you've just literally got like murderers, rapists, and then like literally like a woman who just acted as rationally as she could, given the fact that her husband was a sexually abusive drug dealer who was putting her family in danger. And I just think like Amber is the most hated character in all of Invincible. Like Amber was kind of mean to Mark once, you know? I've like, his father literally used him as a physical weapon to murder hundreds of people. Like, I don't know. It's just such an interesting fact that this is like where discourse goes.
Got mad at Mark for not telling her about his secret identity. Most fans say she was poorly written because she got mad at Mark for not telling her about his secret identity.
Yes, most fans are wrong about that.
Even though she knew the whole time.
Why am I defending a fictional? I just think that people are very, very silly about their interpretation of this. I'm just gonna, yeah, we're gonna white knight for Amber Bennett here. Let's do that.
Telling her would defeat the purpose of having a secret identity. Well, you're all wrong. Amber wasn't poorly written. In fact, Amber is exactly the way she was intended to be. William already explained the reason Amber is the way she is. Before Invincible even started to date Amber, William told him that she was a feminist.
She's also into spicy foods, stand-up comedy, and fourth-wave feminism.
And the rest of you simps can always comment below calling me a bunch of names and say whatever you want, but that's just the truth. Amber was just a toxic feminist who just wanted another reason to hate.
So the argument you're making is the fact that this character is a feminist, and also she was kind of rude a couple of times, and so therefore those two facts must be related to each other. Okay.
The man. Amber closed the door in Invincible's face before he could tell her his secret identity, even though she knew he was invincible in the first place and knew what he was about to do.
So okay, I don't necessarily, unless, I mean, maybe it'll become relevant and I'll just talk about this anyway. I don't know if I want to even go in depth into like how this story is meant to work or what it's trying to say or what it's talking about. But like, I feel like the fact that a lot of these, I'm going to say toxic fans, literally do not have the ability to interpret what this character dynamic was, or what Amber was upset about, why she was concerned, whatever, is so interesting. You know, fuck it, let's talk about it. I rewatched the first few episodes of this show yesterday just because I wanted to for funsies, and I was with friends, and on the first like study date that they have in Invincible, he friggin' abandons her for an hour almost immediately. Like, she literally shows up to his house, and then he's like, oh, sorry, gotta go do a thing, and he acts really suspicious about it, and then he like flies off and leaves her behind without explaining what's going on. Then he comes back, and he talks his way out of it, and then like that's basically their relationship dynamic for most of the first season. Is literally like she makes plans with him, and then he just like doesn't show up and won't tell her why, or won't give clear good answers, and it's obviously like if you have been in a relationship before in your life and you are excited to hang out with someone or spend time with someone, or you care about someone and they're literally just ignoring you or not showing up, or they make promises and then they literally just completely don't make good on them without telling you why or without whatever, like that is hurtful, that is upsetting, that is a very painful experience to go through, and that can drive people to act somewhat irrationally. And I think that, I mean, like, there are things that Amber did in the show that were definitely irrational, but I just think it's so weird that they're like completely unable to sympathize with this character or with the experience that she's going through, when like that would really, really suck. And the fact that, okay, yes, you're right, that there is good reason for Invincible to not want to tell someone his secret identity, especially because he doesn't know her that well, does not make it less upsetting, does not make it less hurtful. And at a certain point, go back to the same freaking shit with the duplicate immortal discourse. Like, if he can't date someone without making them feel like garbage, then he probably shouldn't be in a relationship. Like, that should just be like if you're like, oh yeah, so he's got to do the whole secret identity shtick, like, I'm sorry, there's just nothing else he can do, then don't date people, then don't get into relationships, or only date superheroes. There is a perfectly acceptable superhero relationship that is available to him if that's what he wants to do. But doing this to some random normal human woman is like, it's kind of shitty. It's not like evil, it's not like he's a monster or anything, but I feel like it's fair for her to be kind of upset about it.
Even though she knew he was invincible in the first place and knew what he was about to do.
Amber. Whoa. Amber, I'm in.
She knew exactly what he was about to say, but she closed the door because she still needed a reason to hate him. That's literally what feminism is.
No, that's not. She's upset with the fact that he's trying to use it to get out of trouble, that he's been lying, he's been keeping secrets from her for this whole time, and finally when she's fed up with it, now he's like, oh, okay, well, now I'll tell you. I mean, like, he's basically been calling her bluff this entire time, where she's like, oh, okay, all right, I'll forgive you this time, okay, I'll forgive you this time, okay, I'll forgive you this time, and finally she's like, okay, I'm done with the just forgiving you over and over again with no answers. I'm done, I'm tired of it. And he's like, okay, well, now I'll tell you. Like, yeah, I'm sorry, that is a shitty behavior. That's not a cool thing to do. It's not evil. Again, like, it doesn't have to be, like, it's a critique of our main character. It's a thing that he needs to learn, thing he needs to get better at. And the same way that season 2 is very clearly leading into the fact that he needs to learn how to effectively, like, he needs to learn his own philosophy on violence and on, you know, death and all of that. Like, his relationships with normal humans is also an important and interesting axis for the show to get at. And so the fact that he doesn't seem to understand that pattern of behavior is actually a really interesting character moment and dynamic. And I like the fact that he literally shows the shot or whatever of where, like, oh god, you can't even, here, one sec, like, what, does that look like someone who's just, like, here trying to be, like, a hateful, you know, furious or whatever, toxic, angry feminist? Like, no, she's obviously really upset, but, like, she's at a point where she's kind of tired of it, you know? Like, okay, well, that's it, we're done. Like, I can't deal with this anymore. And I don't know, like, that feels like a pretty human, pretty normal reaction to me.
She knew exactly what he was about to say, but she closed the door because she still needed a reason to hate him. That's literally what feminism is. Women who need a reason to hate a man.
Wait, what the?
Did you
what
hear
the
what
hell?
I just said?
Ugh, I know you're a superhero.
You know. You know?
I'm not an idiot. I figured.
Yes, that is exactly what feminism is. It is needing a reason to hate a man. We're not gonna justify that. We're not gonna explain why that's the case. We're just gonna assert it as fact, because that's the caliber of media criticism that we're on here.
It out weeks ago.
You see, feminists don't really want men to fix the situation. They just want something to keep complaining about. And that's the reason Amber knew a secret the whole time and got mad at him for not telling her, while
She got mad at him for lying to her and putting her through crap. Oh my god. Okay. This show has very clearly, in its adaptation from the comics, been trying to go for a more feminist angle, not just with her, but also with, you know, they made changes to Eve's costume because, like, it is really weird how needlessly revealing it was, like, very obviously to appeal to like the young boy audience in a very, I don't know, just kind of tasteless way and an unhealthy way as well. Go look at literally any alien woman in the entire series of Invincible, and they're either old or they're like drawn to be super sexy. It's almost ridiculous. So yes, the show is recognizing that is a weird kind of trope to be playing off of and to be rolling with. And it's so interesting to me that that it's like, it's literally only when they tell you that's what they're doing. It's only when when William explicitly says, oh yeah, she's feminist, that all of a sudden people are going to be, complaining about it and upset. Like, you can't analyze the fact that the show is doing this in a bunch of different ways and like trying to either amend its messaging or get more interesting messaging across. And like, I don't know, you're not able to engage with it. But yeah, if someone watching needs to hear this, that is not at all what feminism is. I know, as the arbiter of feminism, as actually the inventor, that that's not true. And you might be a bit skeptical of that, but no, he's just I'm not going to even make an argument in response. He's just wrong. He made that up. He's being very, very silly and very, very cringe. But I'm here to tell you he's wrong.
Stopping him from telling her, so she could still be mad at him for not telling her.
Then why are we fighting?
We're fighting because you lied to me. You made me feel stupid and unimportant.
It's a secret identity.
And because you don't trust me.
I'm trusting you now.
This is normal teenager behavior. I don't know who needs to hear that. This is perfectly understandable for a person to be upset about. Is her upsetness with his lack of trust, does that have elements of like unreasonability in it? Sure. Because obviously, yes, it does make sense why he wouldn't want to tell her the truth about his secret identity or whatever. But also it makes sense for her to be upset with the fact that he refuses to tell her that. But yeah, we're gonna pretend like that's completely unreasonable. Also, why, if you're gonna make the argument that she's acting this way because she just wants to be angry and she just wants to like hate men, why would you show her explaining why she's upset? Why would you show her explaining actually she's upset about the dishonesty and about the fact that he made her feel unimportant and stupid? Which, like, yeah, to be clear, he stood her up numerous times with like stupid, shitty excuses. Like, even if you think, okay, yeah, his responsibilities or whatever are more important than her feelings, that does not change the fact that they exist and that she's reasonable to have them, and that if someone treated you that way, you wouldn't just immediately stop caring when you find out that they had a good reason to go and do something else, or to be doing other things. Like, you would still be upset, you would still be hurt, you would still feel sad about it.
Oh my god. I mean, it's cute you think that's enough.
He didn't tell her, she got mad. When he wanted to tell her, she didn't want to listen. Then when he finally told her, she already knew. So yeah, Amber is a feminist, and that's exactly why she's the...
He was using it as a get out of jail free card. That was the point. It was that he pushed her to a breaking point, and then once he did that, then he was like, okay, well, now I'll tell you, making it clear that his objection the whole time was not to telling her. He was willing to tell her. He was just avoiding it until the last possible moment, which again is not an indictment of him as like some horrible person or as some monstrous being. Just like, okay, yeah, that is a thing he shouldn't have done, and that is a thing that he needed to learn to be better at.
The way she is. There's nothing wrong with the character. So if you think Amber is dumb, you think feminism is dumb. If you hate Amber, you hate feminism.
If you hate Amber, you hate feminism. Yeah. Oh my god. All right, no, that was a hell of a closer. That was a hell of a way to end it. Just flat out, hey, if you don't like this character, it's because you hate the entire fucking social, political ideology that she subscribes to. Not even gonna make an argument. Didn't even make a clear connection to why that is. He was just like, oh yeah, feminists hate men, and she was mad at a man. Therefore, feminism is bad because Amber is bad. Oh. Okay. There was another one here that I wanted to talk about. That was good. That was a direction. Oh my god, yes. Freaking Eve's dad isn't a bad guy. I have not seen this before. I have no idea what he's gonna say. But Eve's father in Invincible has treated her very, very, very poorly. And granted, I see that this came out before season 2, so I'm going to, like, I'll probably use that just as kind of evidence that, like, this is the direction they were going, but I'm not gonna be like, oh, you didn't pay attention because in episode 2 he did. Like, okay, yeah, obviously hasn't seen that yet. But okay, let's see here.
A lot of Invincible fans really hate Mr. Wilkins. In case you don't know who that is, that's Eve's dad, and I honestly don't have a problem with him. I actually think he's a great dad. During the Atom Eve Invincible special, we got a glimpse of what they had to go through when they were raising Eve and her abilities allowed her to see atoms. She was just weird. It's just...
Okay, yeah, you're right. He was kind of humanized in the Atom Eve special. He was given some more serious, more thoughtful stuff to go through. That does not change the fact that he was abusive. That just gives you more context for the, you know, for his for the direction that he was going, for the character that they were writing. Like, that doesn't, like, characters having a tragic or sad backstory or going through a lot is not a justification for the horrible things they do. It's just, like, kind of an explanation, and it's not even always an explanation, but okay.
It's the truth. But the series showed that he actually didn't care he was a good dad until Eve started to draw weird symbols that nobody knew what they were, and to be honest, as a parent, that would alarm anyone. And not...
No, what? Okay. You're telling me that if you had children and they started drawing, like, weird shapes, you would be alarmed? Like, actually? Like, is that really, like for real? I feel like it would be, I mean, maybe you'd be confused about it, or you'd be curious, or you'd want to look into what it is that they're doing, or why they're behaving that way, or why they're doing that. But I do not think that would be cause for alarm. Like, I don't know, just like, can you imagine your preschool, like not gross images, not creepy stuff, just like shapes that could maybe be symbols of something. Or, I mean, if your kid was drawing, because obviously what she was drawing were like models of atoms, right? Like, if my child started drawing like super detailed chemical diagrams, or, you know, like reaction coordinates or something, I'd be like, God damn, like, they must be reading that. That's impressive, and I would want to like learn more about it. But I would be pretty excited for that personally.
Not to mention, Eve's mom was also worried about her weird behavior too.
Adam, last year when Samantha kept writing letters over and over again, do you think it was this?
But Eve's dad was judged for...
Yes, she was concerned about it. I mean, I think a little bit. Well, no, I think her reaction's probably fairly understandable. Like really confused. Like, okay, where is my child getting this information? But she was concerned about it. She wasn't like, she didn't overreact. She didn't freak out. She didn't treat her child like garbage. Although she did kind of let her dad do that. But, you know,
being a bad father again because he said this.
Don't be absurd. She wasn't reading science textbooks. She could barely read it all.
Which, in all honesty, is a completely rational response. Not to mention when you keep hearing weird stuff about your kid.
The neighbor called me last week because she'd been staring at his tree for an hour.
Even so, people still hate Mr. Wilkins because of these reasons.
Yes, she was confused, and she didn't treat, like, the reason that people dislike him is not because he was concerned or because he was trying to figure out why she acted the way she did or why she had these weird abilities. It was because of the way that he treated his child. So the fact that her mom was concerned in private does not actually address that criticism at all.
When Rex cheated on Eve, he told her to forgive him and move on. But the thing he's most judged and hated for was the time he basically called...
Are you just gonna gloss over that? Are you just gonna be like, oh yeah, it was... He did tell her to get back with a guy who cheated on her. Anyhow, like, that's a pretty shitty thing to say to your kid, actually. Just, he flat out was like, oh, well, forgive him immediately. Like, there wasn't even a discussion there. He was just like that is that shows a remarkable lack of concern for your child's feelings when you talk to them that way, and when you make it clear that, like, the way they feel about things, like, doesn't matter to that extent. Like, okay.
Called Eve a slut. Then he thanked Invincible for looking past her obvious... was the time he basically called Eve a slut.
Yes, that's also a thing you shouldn't do to your child. Then he thanked Invincible for looking past her obvious flaws and giving her a chance. Yes, that's also a thing you shouldn't do. Wow, you spitting bars here.
Told him that you respected him for that. He said he knows his little angel is no angel because he caught her once. She had Rex living in their house behind her back. And to be honest, that's completely rational and understandable that a man found his daughter living with a boy in his house behind his back. Of course you're going to be wondering what she's up to, and you will never see her in the same light again.
Okay. Obviously this person is a young person. That's why like I don't want to go super hard on like, you know, mind reading. Like I would be surprised if we're talking about someone who's older than like maybe early 20s. But no, that's not a completely, it's reason, obviously. Okay, if your child is living with someone inside your house, that is a thing to be concerned about. That is not a good thing. That is something you need to take care of, if they're doing that behind your back. But that does not therefore mean that you should start telling her new boyfriend that you think she's a slut, or that you think that she's a whore for having lived with a guy one time, a thing that a lot of teenagers would do if they had the opportunity to do so. So he said something else that I wanted to address.
Of course you're going to be wondering what she's up to, and you will never see her in the same light again.
Oh, yeah, what? No? I'm sorry, okay. I don't know what experiences y'all have had growing up, but I know, at least for me, there was a lot of stuff that, like, you know, I'd get into trouble X, Y, or Z way or whatever, and, like, you talk to your parents, and they're like, oh, yeah, I did similar things, or I tried to do similar things as a kid, because as it turns out, most people have some basic, like, similar interests and feelings as a teenager. Most people tend to feel things way more intensely than they do as an adult when they get, you know, they're more tempered and you know, they calm down a bit. So like, no, that's not like if anything, I'd be like, oh, okay, cool, that's where my super obedient, super studious child has been. Like, cool, I'm glad that I'm glad that there's some normalcy there. Obviously it's not a good thing, the thing that she was doing, but yeah, okay. I was like interact with a child, please.
He went on to talk about women are better if they're virgins, and no one even noticed that he was saying that he wanted his daughter to be a virgin. She would get married to somebody while still being a virgin, because most men like virgins, and that's kind of true, to be honest.
Oh my god, no. Okay, okay. I have a degree in sociology. I have studied this a fair bit. This a whole entire topic. The concept of virginity is a social construct. There is no way of knowing that someone is, and there is no fundamental intrinsic difference between someone who has had sex and someone who hasn't. Like, I'm sorry, that's just how that is. Obviously, there are differences in experiences, and there are things that, you know, like there are underlying, there are things on top of that can change the way you think about things and the experiences that you have. But you are not fundamentally different that way. Two, that is not a healthy desire to have. I don't want to, like, I don't even know if I want to get this, like, into this super deeply, but in terms of like relationship health, and obviously you should do whatever you feel comfortable with, whatever you're cool with, whatever you want to do personally, you know, as long as like your partner is on the same page and you guys are talking about it. But like in general, a lot of like super religious people who are radically into the whole like no sex before marriage or whatever end up getting married super young because they're desperate to get laid, because that's just a thing that a lot of young people is really heavily on their mind. And two, they find out that actually the two of them have completely different interests or completely different desires or goals or whatever, and then one of them or both of them are left completely unsatisfied and in an unhealthy environment. So in general, the idea that you should be waiting until you're married to have sex is for most people unhealthy. Again, you know, there's variety to this, there's whatever, but yeah, it's not even I think one of the things that is kind of interesting about this whole topic, this whole subject matter, is that part of the reason why people even care about it is because we have a term put to it. There's a term for, I don't want to get this wrong, a term for someone who hasn't given birth before, you know, if that person who hasn't given birth before, I believe it's nulliparous. We're going to look that up, right? That obviously nobody knows. Yeah. Right. That nobody knows, or nobody uses. But if that was ingrained in our language, if that was a socially normalized term, then that is probably something that we would find ourselves more concerned about. people would be like, oh, okay, well, is she, is this person a nulliparous, whatever. Obviously it's such a weird fucking word. Like, I'm glad that nobody uses it, but there is no fundamental reason to care about this. If you lived in a society where any particular sexual moray was normal, as long as it's not, as long as it's entirely consensual, as long as it's, not actively harming people, which, having had previous partners before you get married, is not harming anyone, unless you design your society in such a manner that it is going to be harmful. It's fine actually to have, unique or have mores that advance, that get healthier and more understanding of, what's good for people and what's not. And beyond that, it's weird for her dad to care. Okay, it's weird for him to be talking about that. So even if you were to treat it as like, oh yeah, this is an important thing, her father does not need to be talking to her boyfriend about that. He doesn't need to be telling her, oh, I want you to know that it's okay. I'm proud of you. I appreciate the fact that my daughter is low value and you still have you're still dating her. Like, fuck off, dude. Have some faith in your child. Give a shit about this person that you ostensibly raised.
He then said she never understood just how important virginity was to a man. And to be honest, if Eve actually listened to her father, if she listened to her dad, she would have gotten pregnant and then...
Okay, this is definitely going to get into spoiler territory. I don't want to skip that over. So many things wrong with that. I feel like hopefully everybody here knows why that's a very silly thing to be concerned about. Like, oh yeah, I don't know. The concept of virginity as being a super important part of relationships it's unhealthy. It's not good for you. If that's something that you care about, I'm not saying that you're like intrinsically wrong to care about it or to have feelings on the matter, but it's something you should examine, right? It's something you should probably like sit down and like ask yourself, like, okay, why do I care? Like, why does this matter to me? Because I think if you asked a lot of people, they're probably just gonna say, well, like because that's just how it is. That's how it's supposed to be. What do you mean? Or they'll launch into some stuff about how it's actually devaluing when someone has had, particularly a woman, has had sex before marriage. And when you do that, you realize like, oh, okay, so it's not even really about your feelings or about your emotions on the matter. You're literally telling me you find this person less valuable. And at that point, I'm like, okay, I don't really care about your perspective. Like, if you're going to make it unequivocally clear that you just like it's a power thing. It's about your like posturing about your masculinity or whatever, about having the most valuable partner, then like fuck off. I don't give a shit, and nobody else should. But if it's something that makes you have feelings, that hurts you in some way or whatever, like examine that. Like, think about why that is. And I'm not saying you have to just completely change your mind all of a sudden. And there are other people who may agree with you or who may be, exactly the kind of person that you're looking for. But it's worth like really engaging with, okay, what about this do we actually care about? Let's see here. Was there anything else that I wanted to get into? I think that might be it on this front. I don't know. To anybody who's watching, I'm curious if anyone has like questions on any of this, or if there's disagreement here. Because I don't know. I feel like this is just unhealthy, and it's really weird that her dad would be super concerned about that. And it's also really weird to be like, oh, well, if you would listen to your creepy father who talks about your sex life to your boyfriends, then like maybe you wouldn't have gotten pregnant. Like, well, there's a lot of ways that wouldn't have happened. And also, it's not his deal. It's not something that he needs to be bothering himself with. But okay. I have a little bit more in me, and I kind of wanted to talk about this anyhow. So if anyone is familiar, in I think 2018, there was an article that was posted by, oh god, I don't even remember. 100 ways. It was the 100 ways, yeah, white people can make life less frustrating for black people. And it was a Vice article, and they recently reposted it. I have no idea why. We're going to make sure this tab is just muted because I do not want to deal with it making noises randomly. One of the problems with doing this in a guest window is the fact that then you can't ad block. But people were obviously like super freaking upset. Like this made the rounds on anti-SJW YouTube and stuff. And it was something that people talked about a lot. And I don't know why Vice is pushing it now, but I kind of wanted to do just a little brief retrospective on it and see how we feel about the advice here. As a person who is white themselves and doesn't actually hate themselves for their race, despite the fact that they consider themselves deeply in favor of a lot of these movements. Like I figure it's worth just like seeing what it was that people were really upset about and like how unhealthy it was. And I don't know, I felt like it'd be a good idea to get canceled today. Like let's have some really bad takes here. So okay, all right, number one. Just because you can't see racism around you doesn't mean it's not happening. Trust people of color's assessment of a situation. So, okay, first part of this, unequivocally true. Fact, don't care about your feelings. Like, the whole colorblind perspective, whatever, is very, very silly and leads to people ignoring, like, serious, actual problems in society and stuff that we should probably be dealing with. Trust people of color's assessment of the situation. Obviously, there's context there. Like, if you're literally saying, oh, yeah, 100% of the time, you should be trusting the black person's experience and their perspective or whatever. Like, no, okay, you can be wrong about things, but it is also, if someone comes to you and they say, hey, I was treated in a racist manner, and your immediate thought is to denigrate them, is to be like, no, you weren't. No, I saw that. I understand. Like, that's an instinct you should be examining. It's not good for you. It's not good for them. It's not good for anyone. Let's see here. Number 2, don't assume that all people of color share the same views. We are not a monolith. Yeah. Also true. Weird when people do that, but not a whole lot to say. Don't assume or guess people's races. This is not a fun game for us. I mean, also generally true. Yeah, I suppose. I mean, it depends on what are people, I guess it depends on what people are assuming here, but like, yeah, you shouldn't be just, I don't know. That's weird. Like, that's weird behavior. You should probably leave people alone. You don't need to be doing that. I don't know where I was going with that. I feel like I had a thought and I got confused and I probably said something stupid, but say la vie. If someone tells you they're from Uganda, don't say I went to Nigeria once. I mean, again, that would be like, there are contexts in which people might have that sort of a conversation. I don't know. Like, so far reading this, I'm just kind of confused why people even cared all that much. Like, this feels pretty inoffensive. And I don't know, like, to the point where I'm almost not sure if there's anything worth like really, really getting into, but we'll go a little bit farther. We'll see if there's anything worth discussing. And I don't know if anyone ever has something they want me to go over on stream. I'm always happy to at least take suggestions. But let's see here. Related, don't refer to Africa as a country. It's a continent and widely varied. Yes, absolutely true. Coolio. Objective fact so far. We're cool. We're vibing here. Rest assured, no person of color ever wants you to get back from holiday, show off your tan, and excitedly exclaim, look, I'm almost as dark as you. Yep, okay. Yep. Yeah, you shouldn't do that. That is a really, really weird thing to do. That is a behavior that I would very much like for you, if you're doing that, to examine. Yeah. The Elite Battle Angel. Woke is everywhere. What is in everything that we love, and people just roll with the punches. I mean, if I understand what you're saying correctly, like, yeah, no, wokeness is in, quote unquote wokeness, right, is something that that exists within all of our media, all of the stuff that we love and care about and find interesting, and it's almost like a complete crapshoot whether or not a person is going to notice it and be upset or not. Like, if they explicitly tell you, even then sometimes they don't pick up on it, but whatever. Don't assume that a person of color knows everything about their country or heritage. Yeah, okay. Don't assume we can run if we're black. Yeah, don't stereotype. Absolutely the case. Oh, this is for people. I totally thought this was just article white ally for black people. I guess it is just like POC in general, which, okay, cool. Totally fine. Regardless as autonomous, unique individuals, not as representative as our race. That feels like just kind of a repetition of that point here, but like, I mean, yeah, again, so far so good. Don't make embarrassing jokes and try to be down. We laugh at you, not with you. Without context, I don't know what they're referring to, but like, I mean, yeah, I guess. I don't know. it's contextual. I guess I understand why someone might be like annoyed with the tone of an article like this, because it is just kind of like it's coming at you, it's making fun of you, it's, you know, a little bit, but also like grow a little bit of a thicker skin. If you have like issues, like just be able to discuss them, be able to talk about it, you know. Let's see here. Don't rinse culturally specific memes. There are, so go enjoy that weird one about plums. This was 2018. I have no idea what they're specifically referring to here. If you're at my house party, don't turn off the weekend to put on Arctic Monkeys. Okay, that was like, that one's a joke bit. Like, I'm not gonna, I don't care. Avoid phrases like, but I have a black friend, I can't be racist. Yeah, yes, avoid that. That is very much something you should not be doing. That's really weird and absolutely does not justify, like, people, people do this with anyone who is like bigoted against their own demographic, but who is a member of is a member of a demographic and then bigoted against that demographic. And it's one of those weird things that like conservatives are able to understand that for white people, where they'll be like, oh, these white feminists or these, you know, these feminist men or whatever, like they're anti-male, they're anti-white, whatever. But then like the fucking second that someone's like, hey, Candace Owens is kind of a white supremacist, or hey, Blair White is transphobic, then all of a sudden they're like, what do you mean? She's trans, Or, you know, like, oh, wow, you're going to talk down to a black woman about racism? It's like, fuck off, you don't believe that. You know that's bullshit. Like, no, she's a white supremacist because of the things that she says and the beliefs that she expresses, not because of, not just because she's a conservative-leaning black woman. Like, fuck off. You know, like, I don't know, it's bullshit. When you endlessly complain about how terrible white people are, you are being that terrible white person. Geez, yeah. That also feels like something that these people would, these like anti-woke whatever people would appreciate. Like, yes, just people who are obsessed with looking good, with looking woke, with looking cool to their to their black coworkers or whatever, are weird and should not do that anymore. They should change that behavior. If they can make that happen. But okay. Don't say shit like, I know what it's like to be a person of color. I'm a ginger. Yeah, obviously that's a completely different, like, I was about to like launch into like, oh, well, obviously that's a completely different cultural experience or whatever. Like, you can't actually compare the fact that like people sometimes make ginger jokes to racism and the history that this country has with it. And then I was like, oh, wait a second. That's no, that's so obviously different that like nobody disagrees with that. Or if they do, they're full of shit. That's yeah. Don't question someone's blackness if they're light skinned. It's not your place. Yeah, don't do that. Colorism is also bad. Racism is its own. I mean, they're their own. They're similar. They're related, but it's bad. Don't do that shit. It's not healthy for anyone. Never try and tell a person of color what is or isn't racist. I mean, again, there are contextual situations where that would be appropriate. The obvious one being any of the, Jesse Lee Peterson or Candace Owens or whatever, whose entire career is based off of denying the existence of racism. Like, no, you can be like, yeah, fuck off. Yes, the fuck it is. But yeah, as a general rule, if that's your instinct, that is something you should be examining. That is a behavior that you should consider altering, because it's not good for you. When you find instances of racist bullshit online, please don't send it to us. I mean, again, that's contextual in terms of your relationship. Like, yeah, I would agree that if you're saying, oh, that's how everyone should act, like, no, there are definitely people who enjoy that sort of thing. If you're in like queer group chats and stuff, like there are definitely people who send people being homophobic or people being transphobic as like as kind of a bonding exercise. You know what I mean? But you shouldn't just assume that that's something that someone is comfortable with. Like that's definitely strange behavior. Oh, voice crack. Read something already written about it rather than coming to your friends / acquaintances of color for hot takes on everything. Appropriative, Kardashian / Miley Cyrus was. Oh God, remember when Miley Cyrus was relevant? Wow. We don't want to think about this 24/7. Again, that depends on your relationship, right? Like there are people who you shouldn't assume that. I'm gonna roll with that. I understand why someone might read this and feel frustrated that they're like, okay, well, my friends act differently, or we have a different relationship, and so then you're kind of annoyed that they're trying to tell you exactly how your relationship should be. So I do understand why someone would be kind of critical of this. We'll probably go a little bit further, and then I don't know. Like, this is kind of a boring article now looking back on it. But I just thought it was worth a revisit. Understand that some days are even more mentally exhausting for people of color thanks to the news cycle. Try not to badger us for our opinions. I mean, that's pretty similar to that. And again, don't assume that that's something that somebody wants to talk about. But when you do have something to say about it, listen. Oh, I bet people were pissed about this at the time. I bet that was it was probably something that people went off about, right? Like, understand that we don't always want to talk about it, but if we do want to talk about it, you need to listen. And I mean, I guess on the surface, I see how someone would be frustrated, but this is clearly a person talking from their own perspective and what they're comfortable with and what they're comfortable talking about. And like, I mean, I assume if they're saying like, listen at any point in time, if someone just comes up to you and is like, hey, I want to talk to you about racism right now, you'd be like, okay, well, no, I'm in the middle of something. But in terms of like, okay, if you're having a conversation with your friend about this important, event or whatever, something that happened, like, yeah, you shouldn't be talking over someone, at least that should be your instinct to tell someone how they should feel about an experience that they have that you don't have, especially something serious like that. Share articles relating to the everyday experiences of race and racism written by people of color. I mean, if you're sharing stuff that's a good thing to do. It's not something you literally have to do. Some people don't share articles on social media, and like, I'm not saying, as the arbiter of all of this, as the person who has decided. Take the shit I'm saying with a grain of salt, please. I'm going off of experiences that I've had with people and the conversations and, like, my ethical perspectives, but I'm not trying to be the arbiter of this. I hope that's clear, but don't be the person who's weird and sycophantic and loves to demonstrate their wokeness constantly to people of color around them. Be thoughtful. Again, I would hope that the anti-woke people read that and they're like, cool, yeah, we agree, that's good, but it probably didn't do that. I don't know. Read books by people of color. I recommend. I've been meaning to read this book. I keep hearing about it. I have no idea how good it actually. Like, I just remember people recommending it and being like, "Oh, I should check that out." I mean, in terms of if your goal is to understand this issue and you're reading only from white authors, like that is something you should probably change. Watch shows that are created by people of color, like Atlanta or Insecure. I've only watched like a couple episodes of that show. I've been meaning to watch it for a while. It looked really good, but I mean, again, like that's a healthy thing to do. That is a good pattern of behavior, good habit to get into, of getting art and media from different voices and different experiences. Have a critical eye when watching TVs and movies. How are they portraying people of color and why? What purpose does it serve? Fucking absolutely. That is a question. I mean, I think you should be asking yourself about that, about a lot of social dynamics. And it doesn't even necessarily need to be related to bigotry, although, I mean, obviously that's a pretty big one. But yes, examining like why the story is telling the story in the way that it does is unquestionably worthwhile. It is a very important part of media criticism. And I understand sometimes you want to just like turn your brain off and like enjoy something, and that's fine. But if you care about movies, if you care about art, if you care about media, like asking yourself why they do the things they do is super, super worthwhile. To give an example that I would hope pretty much anyone can agree with, if I can pull up Transformers military. The Transformers movies portray the military in a very, very, very positive light. I think this is the article that most people reference, but those movies, right? Like the military always comes out looking like good guys when they do that, and the reason for that, oh god, is it gonna make me subscribe? I'm not gonna subscribe to Wired on my guest window, sorry guys. We're gonna mute this tab just in case. But clearly the reason that they do that is because the military gives them special privileges to use their materials, and I believe also like shooting locations. I could be wrong, right? It's worth a read, worth checking this out, worth checking out other articles on this topic. So they're making the military look good because that's what the military is asking them to do in order to provide them with access to the resources that they want to make their movie. So that should be something that if you're interested in this kind of subject matter, if you're concerned about this, that you should be examining, right? Like the fact that, hey, wait a minute, this movie or this TV show is trying to make this group look good why are they doing that? You know, it's never a complete coincidence, right? It might be something that the writers aren't actively intentionally doing. You know what I mean? Like maybe they write a movie about the military and they just think the military is good, and so that's how they're portraying them. And that's just, it's worth examining. I'm not even saying you have to hate it. Like I talked about it on one of my last streams. Like I like Transformers 2007 fairly well. I like Transformers Rise of the Beast, so I guess there wasn't much military in that. But like you can still enjoy things like that and still question why they do the things that they do. Another example is Law and Order. Law and Order, I believe, also gets access to law enforcement materials. Yeah, okay, we're done with this article. I don't want to look at ads or whatever. God damn it, it reloaded. Law and Order does that. They portray the police in a positive light, and they do that very much intentionally. Dick Wolf very much wants to push that message, and that is something that's worth questioning, right? Like, again, you can watch Law and Order and you can enjoy it, but still be like, it is interesting that is the goal of this piece of media, or one of the goals of this piece of media, and maybe that's, you know, maybe that's worth worth examining. Okay. Let's see here. Yeah, okay, having a critical eye. If you go to an art gallery, we'll probably just get to like 30. And then, yeah. If you go to an art gallery, notice how many works are by people of color. If it's lacking, make some noise, send an email, query the curator. White people shouldn't have a monopoly on what can be considered art. I mean, obviously, like, context again, right? Like, there are times where it might be, you know, you might be talking about like a specific artist or a specific family or whatever. But like, yeah, in general, you should be noticing the presence or lack of demographics in a particular situation, because it does tell you something about the society that's creating this piece of media, and potentially the way that it treats members of its society. And again, I have to say, you people notice this with white people all the goddamn time. People bitched and moaned when Amber was black in the TV show. People complain constantly when a character gets race swapped that way. Or when a show literally just has like an all black cast. Like, people complained about fucking Black Panther that way, and that was very silly. That was very much not good. So yeah, like the idea, like, you shouldn't be defaulting to white people being the creators of art or the creators of media. And I guess 28 is also kind of piggybacks off that. If a character you assumed was white in a book is portrayed by an actor of color in the movie, embrace it. Whiteness is not the default. Again, generally, yeah. There are situations where I feel like that was handled poorly, and I mean, okay, I think it's worthwhile being critical of the pattern where studios make like race swap characters and in an attempt to like win points, but they don't actually address, like, they clearly don't actually care about these issues or about the experiences that people are going through. And that absolutely is something that you should be criticizing and that you should be questioning, because I do not think it's cool that Disney just does that and expects to just like win points for it every single time. Every time they do, you know, the first gay character in a movie, and it's like, you've done this 7 goddamn times and you edit it out for China every single time. They edited Finn out of posters for China, if I'm not mistaken. Like, fuck off, you know? But like, there was an example, and I never watched this, so maybe they did this differently, but at least my interpretation was the Heathers reboot. The TV series, where they race swapped the main like Heathers characters, and I did think that was probably like a poor choice, just because I think the fact that these characters are like upper middle class white women was kind of relevant to the fact that they were treated super well. Like, if you have a bunch of super popular characters who are assholes and who are famous, or like, you know, popular in their school and have a whole lot of social power, it is kind of weird to make them a demographic that is not treated that way, generally speaking. And I think that does kind of do some harm to the message you're trying to get across. When they're, you know, all members of like minority groups or whatever, it's like, okay, wait a minute, what message are you trying to send here? Are you trying to say that like, oh, actually, it's totally the case? Like, yeah, these you know, trans people of color, whatever, are popular, or we're so woke that in our universe they're so popular that they suck. Like, I don't know, it's just a weird. Whereas obviously, like, having a character be hegemonically accepted in all of the ways that people seem to care about, right? Oh, she's white, she's rich, she dresses very nicely, she's popular. I think they were good in school. I think actually they faked their way to be good at school. Like all of the things that people treat as important, like that was kind of relevant to that story. But yeah, I don't know. That's like, yes, race swapping is generally speaking fine, and I think it's weird that people care that much about it just in the context of a character no longer being white. Like, get over yourself. Support plays written by and acted in by people of color. The world of theater is overwhelmingly white. Yes, it's a good idea, good thing to do. And then refuse to go to club nights or drag shows or burlesque nights that use culturally appropriative acts. It might be hard to tell what those are if you don't have that experience. And there may well be contexts where you can do more good by engaging with that sort of media. But generally speaking, like, that's oh my god, that's a much more complicated and like nuanced discussion than I'm prepared to have right now, because there are so many different ways to engage with that kind of behavior, that kind of experience, that I don't like. I feel like I wouldn't be able to talk about it very effectively right now. I mean, even less effectively than I've talked about this stuff already. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I'll stop it there. Went through 30 of the reasons. I understand like why someone might feel a little bit antagonized by this just starting out. But like overall, it is weird that people just like lost it at this, when this is something that at worst you can critique some of the ways that they went about things and some of their like attitudes and kind of get over it. When for the most part, I think the advice that they're giving is like average to good, you know, and generally like good stuff to do. I don't know. I'd definitely be interested in talking to someone who disagrees with me on this and just like having a conversation about it in my own little space here. But yeah, I appreciate folks who watched with me. Anyone who is interested in this kind of thing, I have fun talking about it. I will probably try to stream again next weekend. We'll see how that works out. You know, sometimes I just kind of throw stuff on there. I know this was a surprise to most people because I don't announce streams because I'm never confident that I'm actually going to be able to do them. But yeah, appreciate y'all sticking around. Subscribe if you're new. Appreciate that sort of thing. And yeah, y'all take care. I will leave this running for a minute because apparently it cuts off like really, really fast if I don't. So I'm just going to sit here in silence for a minute and then hopefully it won't cut off. Oh, well, there that goes. Okay. We'll wait until it disappears on my screen over here. Okay.